This lesson is to teach you how to add and subtract fractions when they have different denominators. So there's a step-by-step process you can follow, and I would like for you to copy down these steps in your notebook so that the next time you need to add or subtract two fractions that have unlike denominators, you'll have your step-by-step guide handy to follow. So the first step to adding and subtracting fractions that don't have the same denominator, because as you know, you can't do that. They have to have the same denominator. Is to find the lowest common multiple, LCM, of the denominators. Okay, so I'm going to do an example problem on my smaller whiteboard, and I'm going to be following along with fraction pieces on our mat. Okay, so let's think of a problem that's two fractions with unlike denominators. Let's try 3/5 plus 1/10. Okay, and as you see, I wrote this the up and down way. That makes it easier to solve because I know when I see that I have different denominators, I know right away the first thing I'm going to need to do is to find equivalent fractions to each of these, but that have the same denominator. So I know I'm going to be making new fractions. So I always go ahead and set up the whole thing so that I don't have to worry about anything besides the numbers once I get going. I have everything in place that I'm going to need. So let's find the lowest common multiple of our two denominators, 5 and 10. Well, the multiples of 5, we have those memorized. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Multiples of 10 we also have memorized. 10, 20, 30, 40. So did you hear one that they had in common? They had a lot in common, didn't they? What was the lowest one they had in common? It was 10. So our new denominator is going to be 10 because 10 is the lowest common multiple of the two denominators we were given. All right. The second step, once we've found our lowest common multiples, is to find the equivalent fractions. With a common denominator. Okay? And the way we're going to do that is, since we were working with multiples, we know that we had to multiply 5 by something to get to 10. What do we multiply 5 by to get to 10? 2. I'm going to put that little 2 in there just to remind myself that that's what I did. Remember how back in class, when we were reducing fractions, you divide the numerator into the denominator by the same thing in order to make sure your value stays the same? Well, this is exactly the opposite, but still very similar in that if I multiply the 5 by the 2, in order to make an equivalent fraction, I need to multiply the 3 by the same number that I multiplied the 5 by. Remember, fractions are like siblings. You can't give a times 2 to the 5, otherwise the 3 is going to start getting mad. They're going to want a times 2 as well. So we'll keep things fair and even for these siblings. So if 5 times 2 is 10, 3 times 2 is 6. So have I created an equivalent fraction? Well, the pieces will prove it to us. So let me get out 3/5. I'll lower my camera down here. Can you see the 5th on there? 1, 2, 3. 3/5. And we're saying we think that 3/5 is the same amount of stuff as 6/10. So I'm going to lay out 6/10 right next to it, and we'll see if they take up the same amount of space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6/10. Let's push those together. Do they look about the same? They look very similar. Let's lay one over top of the other. And yes, indeed, they are the same. Hey Siri, turn off timer.
Okay, it stopped.
Sorry about that. We're baking brownies. All right. So they're the same amount of stuff. So when I was trying to put my 3/5, our original problem, 3/5 plus 1/10, right? I tried to do it and I found that I can't combine tenths and fifths and come up with one thing. So now I can say I have created an equivalent fraction to 3/5, and it is in such a form that I can now add it to my 1/10. Because as you can see, 1/10, 10 times what makes 10? 10 times 1. So this one is actually going to stay the same because we're keeping the same denominator on that one, right? Sometimes that happens where one of the denominators that you're given ends up being the lowest common multiple of the two numbers. And that's handy because then you only have to convert one. But sometimes you're going to have to convert two fractions. Just got to be willing to do the work. So let's take a look at this. We now have 6/10 plus 1/10. What is 6/10 plus 1/10? 7/10. Because 6 plus 1 is 7, and the denominator stays the same. We can put that together here on our 6/10 plus 1/10. Put them together, 7/10. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you find yourself stuck trying to do your work, you can always come back and watch it again and just input the numbers of the problem you're working on to try to figure it out. If you're still having trouble, Tuesday mornings, 9 to 11, I've got office hours that you can drop in on Zoom. Or you are always welcome to send me a message on the inbox on Canvas, and we can set up a time to Zoom with each other or talk on the phone or FaceTime or whatever works for you, okay?